a joy last week to have my father-in-law Burke here. And I just want to say thank you for loving him so well. And we're ready. I think he's ready. So just continue to pray for our family. And I just want to thank you for all of these years of you loving Burke. Through his sickness, through his mental health, through his dementia. You know, I told him this week, and Burke has had events in his life. And I really believe we were the perfect church for what Burke needed for his soul. Burke had events in his life that were difficult, that were shameful for him. And he would grab me after church, and he would always say, "Can I really be forgiven for that? Can I really be forgiven for that?" And it was always a joy to say, "Yes, you can." And one thing I am certain, that as Burke's memory faded, that the beautiful thing is that he had a Savior that never forgot him. And he's not going to forget him today or tomorrow, whenever that may be. And he will so not forget him that all of the forgiveness and mercy that Burke ever wondered if he had, he will see face to face. So thank you for that and for being with us in our journey. We are in the midst of this. I said earlier when I baptized Aurora and Harlow that I love where Nature Coast Church is, and it's really been impactful these last few weeks in the sense that, I always pray. There's so much religion and nonsense out there that we kind of get our heads filled with that you share and you speak, and we've talked a lot about the courtroom and just being in a world where we can't even get out of bed in the morning. When our feet hit the ground, we think about what am I got to do today? And when our feet hit the bed at night, we look back over ourselves and say, we judge ourselves. I didn't get everything done that I wanted. Could I have been more profitable for my day? How am I going to run my day? I mean, we literally, the waking breath of our moment of every life is a courtroom. It's like this inner courtroom that's going on in our heads and minds. And Paul talked about that in Romans 8, and it's been good to my heart. I know a week or so ago, Nikki even posted on Facebook about just Jesus just simply saying, follow him. And, we've added all of these realities to this. And it's just as simple as Jesus. And it reminds me that, Amy's parents are going through what Burke is going through. And her parents are Catholic, and they had a priest come in to her and talk to her mom. And he asked her mom, do you know, Anna, how you're going to get to heaven? And she said a few things, and I think she might have said something, well, you tell me. And you know what the priest said to her? Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. It's that stupidly simple, and yet we create enterprises of much more than that. And we were meeting with someone last week after church, and one of the individuals that we were meeting with after church had come in late, and we met and chatted and talked. Felt like we had a great time, and one of the people from here was thanking this young lad for showing up, and he used the word, and it struck me, he used the word, I know it was courageous for you to show up here. And I got to thinking, I even said something, like, it's courageous. Why does it have to be? Should we be curious about why it would take someone who's not really engaged with church so much? Why does it take such courage? Why do we even think it's courageous? And I actually think it is courageous for him. Because I think what was being said is, when someone walks into a church, guess what they expect to find? A courtroom. They expect to find a courtroom. I mean, we should be curious by asking ourselves this question: why is it courageous just for someone to show up at church? What do they think we're going to do to them? No, and I'm being serious, and I'm not knocking the person. I think there is a very real perceived reality that to show up at a church means... The other question I could be curious about, because we're in the Gospels today, is did people seem to have the exact opposite reaction to Jesus, is what I'm saying. They flocked to Jesus. These were people that were kind of rejected by the religious world. Yet we find that they seem to seek out and come to Jesus because Jesus was offering something. I guess I'm asking the church to be more like that. Let this place be a place where people, I think it will always be courageous to come to a church. Honestly, it's courageous to me. I was at a funeral last week. I know I'm kind of rambling, and that's just because my minds are kind of scattered. But I was at a funeral last week, and the Bagleys were there. And I got there early because I had a part in the service. It wasn't here. It was somewhere else. And I quietly came in, and I was there about a half hour early and just kind of sat down on the back row and was doing my thing. But then I stepped out because there were a couple other people I knew that came in. And I went back to sit in the back row, and the church is a little larger than this in its sanctuary. I went back to sit where I was sitting, and the Bagleys had claimed the whole back row. And I said, "You took my seat." This is where I sit when I visit a church. I always sit in the back row. I just think it's that natural thing that we're unsure of when we come into a church. I think Jesus just speaks something different to us. But I have no problem with sitting in the back row. I will always sit in the back row if I visit a church. But for those of you who sit closer, that's great for you too. All righty. We are in the Gospel of Matthew. I'm going to read all of the slides, and then I'm going to come back to the Matthew portion. And I am going to kind of work through this pretty quickly. Now, let's just read Matthew. I won't read the Isaiah. Now, when Jesus heard about John the Baptist kind of got taken out by King Herod, he withdrew there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard about this, they followed him on foot from the cities. This is what got me. They're just following Jesus. When he came ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them. And he healed their sick. Now, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This place is a desolate place. It's secluded, and the hour is already past to eat. And send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "They don't need to do that. You give them something to eat." And they said to him, "Well, we don't have anything. We've got a Lunchable here. We got 5 loaves and 2 fish." And he said, "Well, bring that to me." And he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he looked up toward heaven, and he blessed the food, breaking the loaves, and he gave them to disciples, and disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. And they picked up what was left over, the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides women and children. So here we kind of have a famous miracle of Jesus, which we call the feeding of the 5,000. You can go back to the first slide of it, Matthew. Um, there's so much in this. I'm going to work through. You can actually go to the second slide because that's kind of where the story starts. It was evening, and the disciples came to him, said, "This is a wilderness place, and the hour is already past to eat." There's lots of people in this place, and it's time for them to eat. And they've had a day with Jesus, but now it's time past to eat. So the disciples, practically speaking, understand the situation. So they want to send the people away so that they may go get food for themselves. I think in the gospel, we have a great picture of religion here. It's a great picture of religion. God has done his part for the day. Now it's time for you to go do your part. It's time to send them down to McDonald's or call the Papa John's and get them fed. They are hungry. You've given them some information here. They're hungry. So now you send them away. You send them on their merry way, and they can go do what? They can buy food for themselves. That's religion. God does his part. Now you go out and do your part. But Jesus is honestly pretty funny here. He said to them, they don't need to go. They don't need to go anywhere. You give them something to eat. I mean, that's laughable, right? You give them something to eat. There's 5,000 people there. How are they going to do that? The disciples, next slide, they're so good because they walk right into the gospel. Jesus asked the disciples to give the people something to eat. And what do the disciples say to Jesus? We have nothing. Nothing. We have nothing. I have 5 loaves and 2 fish. Same thing as saying we have nothing, which is why they say we have nothing. And now Jesus is saying, now I got something to work with here. I got people in need who have nothing but me. I have the perfect story for Jesus plus nothing equals everything. You give them something to eat. You feed them. And the disciples say, we can't feed them. We don't have nothing. And when the disciples said they had nothing, what did Jesus say? Bring them to me. It's just the gospel. It's just the good news. Bring them to me. So they bring their nothingness, their 5 loaves and 2 fish. And Jesus feeds the crowds with the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He blessed it, prayed over it, and last slide, and they all ate and were satisfied. That's the story in a nutshell. People in need with nothing to offer. Jesus says, bring them to me. And then Jesus satisfies them with piles left over. That's the story. People, nothing, Jesus, everything, and then more. Says, so I just really want to talk about the 12 baskets. Why 12 baskets? Like, is Jesus just like Jesus just showing off here? Like, okay, I'll feed them with that 5 things. Those 5 loaves and 2 fishes? I mean, why so many leftovers? What's the big deal? I think one of the easy things is Jesus was never obviously worried about them eating in the first place. Like, you're worried if I've got enough for 5,000. It's not like he broke the bread and he blessed it, and just as they got to the 5,000th person, it ran out. Whew! Had to ration that, maybe start going slow. Maybe the people, it's like a church potluck. The people at the beginning get a little bit more, and then you get a little bit less. No, he says there's 12 baskets full. After. Isn't it like religion, though? We always try, the church always tries church always tries to relegate, to monitor abundance, don't we? And here's what we like to monitor. I mean, what can there never be an abundance of? Grace, right? Oh, you can't be too reckless with grace. Oh, yes, grace, but you can't have too much grace. So we start to monitor grace. We start to seek to put limits on it. We start to qualify it. I always say this, and I am tired, and my nights have been long this week, and so you're going to maybe get a different little version of me this morning. But one of the words that religion likes to use is the word balance. Balance. I always used to, when we'd have leadership meetings here, I would always say, when you hear the word balance, the first words in your mind should begin with a B and end with an S. Yes, exactly right. I didn't say it. Rick said it. Do you want to say it a little louder, Rick? Okay, he doesn't. When you hear the word the word balance. When you hear the word balance in religious circles, you should immediately think that Jesus has left the room. And it's nothing but BS from that point on. The other thing we try to monitor and ration is forgiveness. Oh, we try to ration that. We try to do that. We think God does that. We think when we've done something again, God's up there and said, well, I already forgave you. I already forgave you for that. I maybe will give you one more chance, but there is some limited forgiveness here. There's certainly not 12 baskets full, is there? We ration it. The other word that religious people like to use when it comes to the abundance of God, and if you're too free with the abundance of God, well, at our church, we preach the whole counsel of God. That's also code word for BS. You know what the whole counsel of God is according to the Bible? Right there, the cross is the whole counsel of God. It's all of the wisdom of God. It's right there for you and for me and in abundance. We're worried about rationing, but this story tells us that Jesus keeps breaking bread like someone who's worried that it's never going to run out. That's who Jesus is. He just keeps breaking the bread like he is never worried that it's going to run out. And then there's 12 baskets full. There were 12. Probably had to do with the 12 disciples. But those baskets are for you and I to deliver the goods of Jesus to the world. We as church so often try to manufacture and explain Jesus. When we're really, when a waiter brings you food at your restaurant, most of the time, 90% of the time, they didn't make the food. They didn't make the food. They are carrying food to you that was made by someone else. Listen, church, we got the easiest job in the world. All we're doing is carrying food, grace, mercy, and forgiveness created by someone else and in handing it out to table after table, to person after person after person. That's the role of the church. The role of the church isn't to manufacture Jesus. The role of the church isn't to explain Jesus. The role of the church is just to take what he's already accomplished, what he's already made, and give it away to people. Yet we treat Jesus like he's fragile. You know, in the Bible, Christ he never said the church needed, he wasn't looking for the church to be lawyers. In fact, in Acts, when he ascends to heaven, he says he's looking for witnesses to who he is and what he did. He's not looking for people to defend him. He's not looking for people to make sure he's completely understood. He's looking for people who can give himself away. Listen, when Jesus broke the bread here and he gave it out, he didn't give a pamphlet out explaining the bread. He just gave the bread. And that's what we do at church. We've got to explain Jesus. I'm honestly here not every Sunday to explain Jesus here. I'm here to give him to you. There's a huge difference. Jesus is the bread that gets broken and handed out, and there's always more of him to give. So we don't need to be worried about it. Look at this Jesus. He touches lepers. He eats with sinners. He washes feet of Peter and Judas. He lets a suspect woman throw her hair down and wash his feet. He receives doubting Thomas. Judas sits at his table. Peter becomes the denier, becomes the preacher of the resurrection. Jesus, his whole ministry and his whole life has put himself in the hands of people who have mishandled him, and guess what? He survived. Which means he can survive me. Right? All Jesus ever does is put himself in the hands of people who mishandle him, and he survives. That's good news for me, and that's good news for you. Jesus has survived every imperfect explanation of him for the last 2,000 years. He will survive mine, and he will survive yours, because he's good that way. So come, we pass the bread. Every baptism, every communion, every confession that we read here is a piece of bread placed into empty hands. And the good news for Nature Coast here is not necessarily that Jesus fed the 5,000. You know what the good news for you and I is? That Jesus has fed every hungry sinner who has ever lived for thousands upon thousands of years. And there's still 12 baskets full of his mercy, his grace, and forgiveness. It will never run out. That is the good news for Nature Coast. Is for thousands and thousands upon thousands of years, Jesus has handed out his broken body and his shed blood to broken people and forgiven sinners. And there's still more to come around. Nature Coast never needs to worry about the supply of God's love, mercy, and grace. It will always be there. Always. He's not going to run out this morning. He's not going to run out when I go home today and I spend my last few hours with Burke. He's never, ever going to run out in your story or my story either. John, the gospel writer, tried to tell us this. He says in John 1, describing Jesus who's coming, it is upon Jesus that we have received grace, piled upon grace. Not grace replacing grace, but grace piled upon grace. John is saying here that his grace, his forgiveness, and his love is like the ocean. You standing at the foot of the ocean, and you can stand there from the day you are born till the day you are die, and you can stand on that shoreline, and every second of every day, wave upon wave will come, and you will not stop it, and you can go there from morning to night, and wave upon grace upon grace. It's piling, it comes, it comes, it comes, it comes. You can go there today to Fort Island Trail. It will come, it will come, it will come, and it will never stop coming. That is God's love and His forgiveness and His grace. That is His 12 baskets full. Why does the church try to ration it? Why do we try to ration it? And withhold it. One, it will survive. I could try to withhold the waves on the shoreline from coming in and hitting your feet over and over again, and there's not one thing I can do to stop it. So I could even try to ration God's forgiveness and grace for you, and guess what? It can't be stopped. It can't be stopped. $12 baskets full. Leftovers. You know, these miracles reveal more than just a miracle. They reveal the heart of God. You know where the heart of God is? You want to know what the heart of God looks like? 12 baskets full. That's the heart of God. The heart of God is that He will keep breaking bread. And He will keep giving that bread to hungry people. And He will never, ever run out. Praise be to Jesus. He has never run out. And so for the question for the church, I always say this. People be afraid to be baptized. Usually to be baptized, guess what we do if you want to be baptized? Except we baptize babies here, so we can't do it to the babies. But we do it to the parents. We corporately don't do. Guess what has to happen usually before a baptism at any most given church? You have to go, classes. You have to go to a courtroom to make sure you're going to give the exact right answer, because we wouldn't want to accidentally give God's grace out to someone who didn't deserve it. We build a courtroom of reality. And whether it was when we had membership, which we don't now, or the table, we do the same thing to the table. We do the same thing with baptism. You know why we have classes and we have meetings and we have courtrooms to decide whether two people should get married or not, or where? You know why we do that? Because we are creating classrooms and we are creating courtrooms to decide who is worthy. That question has already been answered in Jesus. so we don't need to ask it. So the question we ask, we don't even need to ask, because when Aurora comes to me and says, I want to be baptized, if you are going to ask a question, don't ask, are you worthy, but are you hungry? Are you hungry? And the very question, can I be baptized, expresses what? Hunger, thirst. You're sitting here this morning. You may come back week after week. You may never come back. But I guarantee you, at the basis level, if you are here this morning, unless you're a kid and your parent dragged you here, you're here because you were hungry for some reason. I don't have to guess. I don't have to guess if you should be a member here. You just keep showing up here. You must be hungry. The church's first question should be, are you hungry? Because Jesus has already determined your worthiness on the cross. The gospel, this is a quote from someone the church has tried to ration, but she's with Jesus now, so it's okay to quote. Anyway, I won't give her a name because then people wouldn't listen to her. Can we just listen to this? The gospel doesn't need a coalition to keep the wrong people out. It needs a family of sinners saved by grace, committed to tearing down the walls of the church and throwing them wide open and shouting, welcome. There's bread and there's wine. Come eat with us. Because the kingdom of God is not for the worthy, it's for the hungry. Are you hungry? Because if you are this morning, there's 12 baskets full that will never, ever, ever run out of your need for mercy and grace and love. That's the good news of the gospel story. Religion and people that offer nothing. A Christ that says, bring it to me. A Christ then who then supplies and satisfies every piece. I love the word here in this version. There were 12 baskets full of what kind of pieces? Broken pieces. Broken pieces. Sounds like a good metaphor for the church, doesn't it? God loves to save and create and give out and use broken people and broken pieces. Can I just tell you that Recovery Church on Wednesday nights will just bless your heart and your soul. And Wednesday night, Betty Grant shared her story, and many were touched. And the work that God is doing in there is to me, we like to compare the two. You just can do things at Recovery Church you just can't do here. We can mimic them. We can do things. But I would just say it's a place where you're free. You're free to share your heart. I've been attending as well because it's just good for my heart and my soul. And just to see God at work and move in stories that are there. It's very moving to me. And part of even my loss of words now is just to hold stories sacred that are there. But just the natural, when you go to Recovery Church, there you and I hope you get it when you come to Nature Coast too, but you really don't get this courtroom. You're not asking who belongs and who doesn't belong, because everyone who shows up in the rooms of recovery or at Recovery Church, they begin their recovery with nothing, right? So when you have nothing, there's nothing to really hold court over anymore. And it's just a blessing. And I honestly could wish that there are faces here that are even newer to Nature Coast that have touched my heart, brother. In the back row, you minister to me, my man. You do. And I love you. Recovery Church. It's a great thing that it's happened at Nature Coast. And guess what? I didn't even dream it up. God did through the heart of his people. Wednesday nights, 7 o'clock. Christ is ours forevermore. Go in peace. Amen.